Ayubowan, you are joining us today on our SriLankan's YouTube channel, which complements the Sri Lankan's newspaper, the only Sri Lankan community newspaper in New Zealand. It enjoys wide and free distribution across the country. Sri Lanka is renowned for its tea, arguably the finest tea in the world. And it would not be an exaggeration to say that the Dilmah Ceylon Tea Company is the premier organization representing Sri Lankan tea. The brand Dilmah and its founder, the late Dilhan Fernando, are synonymous with top-notch tea among Sri Lankans, but also among the citizens of the world. So it is a privilege indeed to welcome our guest for today, the younger son of the late Dilhan Fernando, second-generation tea maker and chairman of Dilmah Tea, Dilhan Fernando. Welcome, Dilhan. We welcome you to our channel and we thank you for sitting down with us today.
Thrilled to be here. Always happy to be in New Zealand. Thank you.
Dilmah is a household name among us Sri Lankans. It has been nominated for the 9th consecutive year as the most trusted tea brand in New Zealand. But could you just talk us through its origin story and segue to the current status of the organization?
It's a simple origin story, although an unlikely one. My father came from a very tiny hamlet in Negombo, just a little bit beyond Negombo, called Pilisandarak. If you blink, you would miss it. It's a little bit beyond Pitipana. And from this tiny place, you have this person from a very ordinary, lower middle class family who had an extraordinary vision and a dream. And that was based on my father's simple understanding of the efforts that go into tea making and the terrible dysfunction in the fact that our tea, made with so much love and care and expertise in Sri Lanka, was then taken away to, at the time, England or other countries where the value was added by people who were simply trading. Now, when you trade, your interest is in buying cheap and selling as expensive as possible. And so that relationship didn't work. But my father understood that for the workers in the industry, for the industry itself, to develop innovation, to do all of those things that you need to be able to see Sri Lanka harnessing the potential in Ceylon tea, there had to be something different. Cutting a long story short, it took him 35 years, and eventually in September 1985, he was able to bring Dilmah to market. It took him so long because at the time there were no other growers in tea, in coffee or in cocoa who were actually offering their tea or coffee or cocoa to the market directly. Although, you know, you hear nursery rhymes and so on of the farmer going to the market. Unfortunately, that's only in the nursery rhymes. So in spite of Sri Lanka having her independence in 1948, we were still very much victim to a colonial form, economic form, which was very corrosive. So 1985 was when Dilmah was born. And there again, there is a uniqueness because my father's strength then and now, what we have inherited, the values, was that he never went to university. He studies up to what was then the senior school certificate, SSC, I guess equivalent to today's A-levels. Now that was an asset because he never came across the business school methodology, nor did he ever get corrupted in his mind on the belief that prevailed at the time that the purpose of business is to make profit. For my father, he was influenced by my grandmother from that tiny village, and the influence was of kindness, also of family values. And so he understood that whether you're in a business or whether you're in a family situation or amongst friends, kindness is what defines us as people, as humans. It's part of being humane. So he integrated that into his business. So today we have the outcome, which is what is our strength, which is our resilience, in the fact that Dilmah today is a business where my family's passion for tea is demonstrated through our teas, through the taste adventure and all of the good things, the taste and the goodness, but it's aligned with the philosophy of serving humanity, aligned with the purpose. Without a purpose, a business becomes meaningless. And so in this case, we have that joy, and it's also a strength. And I'm not saying this to be touchy-feely or, to have your readers or viewers thinking highly of us. We believe it's a norm. A business must contribute to its community because a business exists because of a community. And so you have to return the favor, otherwise you become a parasite. And so today, the MJ Foundation, which is a foundation named after my father, we have 300 people in the field. We run 85 schools, free schools. We have culinary schools, free culinary schools. We see people's lives transformed. We have children, we have schools for children with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, ADHD, all free, of course. This is what we use our profits for, because my father has mandated it for mine and future generations. So I now travel around with my son, and we feel my father's presence every day, because those values that he taught us really define our path in a very real sense.
So that's a beautiful amalgamation of service and commercial interests. It's a wonderful legacy, I think.
The only way.
Absolutely, yes. Your father left big shoes to fill. Now, you've spoken a little bit about his legacy. What is your own perception of this legacy? And I think you've touched on that as well, but if you could just elaborate a little more. And also tell us, why did you decide to follow in his wake without migrating to a different profession or a pursuit?
Well, I'll tell you through the example of my son. When he graduated from Exeter University, as when I graduated from the London School of Economics many years ago, we got offers from, at the end of the day, you have many businesses, mainly accounting and finance, advisory businesses that come, and they try to take, recruit people, or they offer recruitment. And at that time, for me, there was no question. I was coming back to the family business. It was a time even then, in the late 80s, early 90s, that people were actually migrating out of Sri Lanka. And so for most people, it was incomprehensible. When my son, a couple of years ago, took that decision to return and join the family business, similarly, it was a time when Sri Lanka was in crisis. And it was a time when people were leaving Sri Lanka.
So it must have been a very controversial decision.
It was challenging, yes. But it was actually fairly simple for him. And, well, I understood his rationale, because he told me, look, these are the offers on the table. What do you think? So I told him that if you take the offer from that accountancy company, within 2 years, you're going to have a salary that's higher than mine as the CEO of the business. So don't expect money. But if you're coming back, come back for the right reason. And of course, he took that decision. And that is the reason why I respect that legacy, because anybody can make money for a business.
Yes.
But the fulfillment of being able to express your success in the lives of others, again, I don't want it to sound like, I'm seeking some sort of praise or anything. No, we're not. We genuinely believe, through experience, that when you do something for someone else and you have the joy of seeing, through our scholarship program, we have children of plantation workers who are magistrates, who are doctors, some who are lawyers. We have many who are chefs, some who are already here in New Zealand who have graduated. We see youth who've had substance abuse problems, whose lives are transformed. Now, you can never compare that with having a few extra zeros in the bank. I mean, from a practical perspective, from a human perspective, if you sit amongst people who say, what you did helped me and it changed my life,
yes,
there is nothing to describe the fulfillment. I mean, that's part of being human. That's for all of us. So, but equally, my father always taught us, based on our faith significantly. And for my father, his achievement was based on his invincible faith and his relentless determination. It was the fact that success is a very temporary phenomenon. You do something now, great, well done. You sold 5 containers, wonderful, we made some profit. Let's bank it, let's get back to work. It's a very temporary, fleeting concept. But beyond success, something much greater, and that is significance. So significance is connected to what you do for others. And it's others and their lives that will determine your significance or not. And you look at the last words of any great business person, whether it's Apple, it's Walmart. Look at these great businesses. Look at the last words of their founders, always related to relationships.
Yes.
Are their final words ever, I made billions for my company? No, never. It's always to do with what they achieved in terms of friendships, relationships. And so, in that context, you can never measure the fulfillment that you get from saying, what I did in my 9 to 5 changed her life, helped her to become a cook, helped him to become a lawyer. And so that, I think, is the legacy that I have inherited, which is a greater privilege than anything to steward. The other day I was asked in Perth what my legacy would be, and I said, look, quite honestly, my father's legacy is so great and so important for Sri Lanka in its current stage of development that I don't want my legacy. I'm very happy. You know, legacy is connected to vanity, is connected to ego.
Yes.
But for my father, he was a very humble man. And he also taught us that an important aspect of business is humility. And so, taking all of that into perspective, his legacy is something that is so great that it must be nurtured, it must be built, it must be replicated. So why I talk about it is simply to encourage other people, other businesses, to understand that as business, our job is not simply to create economic value, it is to create social and natural value as well. And so we need to embrace this beautiful concept of serving humanity.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful ethos, really, to perpetuate, you know, the valorizing of humanity above material and commercial success. Important and very significant, I think, for the world we live in today.
Thank you.
Diverging just a little bit from that trend of questioning, although that's extremely interesting, we Sri Lankans love our cuppa. But the global market appears dominated by coffee. Even with the significant British influence in New Zealand, New Zealanders are primarily coffee drinkers. The office worker, the commuter with a cup of coffee in hand is a ubiquitous sight across the major cities of New Zealand. So from that perspective, do you think that it is accurate to say that tea is perceived as a more elite beverage and that coffee is the brew of the masses? And how, if so, how would you go about changing this trend and popularizing tea or making it helping it acquire a more a wider kind of appeal?
No, I think the answer is quite simple. Tea has not been marketed. We have failed in communicating what tea is. Look at Sri Lanka. We have the finest cinnamon in the world. It combats breast cancer, it protects from dementia, it protects from other cancers, stroke, so many things. Tea is no different. It's natural, it's plant-based, it's artisanal, it's uniquely rich in antioxidants, it supports cognitive health, it enhances mood. The list goes on. Now, when you look at that, what tea offers, what consumers are asking us, you find an almost perfect overlap.
Yes.
So, what we have failed to do is in communicating it, and that is my father's strength. Because when we were colonized, we gained independence in 48. My father fought against the economic colonization of Sri Lanka because the British East India Company simply gave way to multinational corporations that profited from our teas, profit from our cinnamon. If you look around you, will you see a Sri Lankan brand for cinnamon? Yet King Solomon, 1000 BC, came to Sri Lanka and called Ceylon cinnamon a treasure that was greater than any other spice. The Romans, the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, they talked of Ceylon cinnamon as something extraordinary. It was a treasure of Rome. So we have failed to communicate because that colonization of our economy has also colonized our mind to an extent, because even today, on April 28th, we launched Dilma Ceylon cinnamon. We grow cinnamon and we presented it after, since 2003, trying to encourage other businesses to do that, to take it on, because it is their responsibility. But having failed and established Ceylon Spice Company 12 years ago, having built facilities for sterilization, etc., the focus is on selling cheap. Now, if you go around the world, sadly, you don't see too many equivalents of Dilma. And when I say equivalents of Dilma, I don't mean a brand only. A brand is important, but a brand that presents an experience. Here we offer an experience. We just finished a tea degustation, tea pairing. Yesterday we did a similar, a very special high tea. A few weeks ago we did tea mixology with bartenders in Singapore. We had master classes across Australia, in Melbourne at the Food and Wine Show. You need to have the confidence to understand, to love your product, and to build an experience that a consumer can connect to. We can't sell a cuppa. We can't sell a spice. You have to sell an experience. And I think there is the value, because there's no sense at all. We have the best cashew nuts, the best cinnamon, the best tea. We have the best cardamom, clove, pepper. The list goes on. Yet, if we sell it in bulk and expect other people to do us the favor overseas, you're going to fail. And Sri Lanka needs 100 Dilmas. Sri Lanka has a potential for 1,000 Dilmas. Whether it is tourism, we should not go for the mass. Let coffee have the mass. Mass is cheap, but we are a country that grows great products, but we're a small country. So in any category, we should always aim for the positioning of the best. My father always told us, never try to be the biggest, try to be the best, because that's what Dilma needs to be. And so we do the same with cinnamon. We want to be the best, which doesn't mean selling a lot. It means selling sufficient to be able to sell, to be able to share our profits, to be able to help people in need in Sri Lanka, to be able to build regenerative agricultural practices. We just had a climate summit. We sponsored a climate summit in Sri Lanka on the 7th of May. This is a message that must go to Sri Lankan companies, because if they don't adapt, if they don't understand the threat of climate change, our model will be broken, will end up in disaster. So green growth is what we are proposing, what we are pushing. We brought people from different parts of the world together with colleagues in the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce to talk about this. This is the responsibility of a business. And so by adding value, you're able to help the people of Sri Lanka. We're able to nurture nature. We're able to support innovation and take Sri Lanka to the next step in terms of being able to benefit from our produce. So I would say Sri Lankan tea unfortunately has yielded a position to coffee simply because we have failed to communicate. There's no point in saying, oh, take tea with or without milk, with or without sugar. It's gone. It was maybe not even 40 years ago. Today, we should be talking about experiences. What is it that you like? How can I craft something special for you? Can I use a bit of basil leaf? What do you have? Beautiful honeys in New Zealand. What's this honey? Let's talk to a honey producer. Let's do a little bit of some masterclass. Let's talk to people. Let's engage. Let's go deep into the product. And so That is what we need to be able to create an experience that will engage. Coffee has done that because the Italians have done a wonderful job of marketing coffee. Now in New Zealand, here in Wellington, you have a very vibrant coffee sector. But if you present tea in the proper context with the proper storyline, I can assure you coffee is no competitor. Of course, it's compatible. I don't think tea and coffee are competitors. I think that tea and coffee, it's a choice. You might have coffee in the morning, you might have tea after. They're very compatible.
Yes, some interesting insights on the versatility and marketability of tea. I think we've all come to, we are still very, I think, tunnel visioned when we think about tea, and you talk about expanding our view of tea in order to market it more successfully. Your father comes from a generation before the baby boomer generation. Many of your current employees, your son included, are surely Gen Zers, and there are, I'm sure, potential Gen Alphas aspiring to work with you or to become tea planters, to enter the industry themselves. How adaptable at present is your company's business and work ethic, not only in terms of employment, but also marketing when it comes to dealing with these diverse age groups?
Well, I have a simple principle. You know, during COVID, we had the work from home model like everyone else.
Yes.
But unfortunately, well, I must say that at the end of COVID, while we were still in work from home mode, many of our employees said, look, they want to come into office. And of course, at that time, we got the relevant clearances and brought them in towards the end of COVID. And what we found was that the disconnected work from home model does not work. And I think even Zoom, the creator of a platform that enabled work from home, they've also realized that. And the reason for that is that you lack human interaction. You know, when you have an issue with us, you need to taste, you need to talk, you need to look at a tea, you need to be able to explain different things. You need that human interaction. And for people, they also needed to be able to talk to each other about a problem, talk to each other about a solution, and also they wanted to I guess, encourage each other. And so all of this was absent in the work from home model. So we came to a point where we had to take a hard look at the situation, and we decided, look, this doesn't work. But where the business model is concerned, anyone with a good idea, whether it's a worker, whether it's executive, whether it's I must give you an example. We have an internship. We have DIP, it's called. It's an acronym. It sounds a bit silly. Dilma Internship Program.
Well, apt for tea business.
Yes. We have youth coming in from universities. They intern with us. Usually have 20, 30. I meet them every month. And a lot of the insights they give, and I encourage them. I tell them, look, criticize me, criticize what we do. Tell us what you would do better. It's incredibly, incredibly insightful, because that gives us the ability to understand, look, can we do something better? Can the technology enable us? Can this? So it's technology that is going to unlock efficiency in processes. It's technology that is going to streamline a lot of these things. So for us, we are absolutely open. And even if consumers write to us, we're a family business. There is no arrogance. There are no holy grails. It is what it is. And ultimately, the consumer tells us what we need to do, and what we do, we need to do it as efficiently as possible. So if somebody has a good idea, whether she's a worker or he's a customer or whatever, I love to hear anything where we can improve ourselves.
It's wonderful. I think you preempted this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Agricultural technology and science are developing at tremendous breakneck speed. We hear a lot about modern harvesting technologies, new varieties of agricultural products, sustainable land management methods. How much emphasis has Dilma given to this aspect?
Critical for us. Because in a family business, your perspective is not the tenure of a CEO or chairman, it is actually generations. So I need to make sure that my son and his generations are able to farm the same land that we farm. So we have a unit called the Agricultural Innovation Nucleus, which focuses on regenerative agriculture, on biochar, on using different new technologies. Well, I mean, maybe you can't call them technologies, but new methods. Agroforestry, we have, I guess, rainwater harvesting to allow amphibians and biological containment to help us with pest control, fungus control. There's so much that needs to be done, not only for the present, but also to mitigate what's around the corner. I mean, Sri Lanka is suffering as a result of climate change. So there is no universe in which you would say that you don't need to look at new methods of circular economy methods, new methods of protecting soils, new regenerative methods, etc. So very, very important. We are open to it. Not only open, we are propagating it. We have set up Biodiversity Sri Lanka, which is an organization that is specifically committed to building a broad coalition for the environmental good. So we take our best practice. We appreciate that we're not going to move the needle when it comes to the country, but together we can do more. So we are encouraging collaboration amongst other businesses and us.
Fantastic. This next question also I think you preempted, and you laid a lot of emphasis on the ethos of service that your father inculcated in you and that you are now propagating. But again, I think it needs to be understood that it is a grim reality that Sri Lankan plantation workers are amongst the most marginalized of communities in Sri Lanka. A lot of them live with limited access to education and to healthcare. What are Dilma's plans to give back to this particular segment of the Sri Lankan community, as well as to any other disadvantaged demographics in Sri Lanka?
You know, unfortunately, it's a very dysfunctional system that operates there. You wouldn't believe this, but typically a tea plantation worker has only a 4-hour window of work. Of the resident workers on our tea gardens, only 17% work for us. It's not their fault, but the question is, what do we do? And this is something we have been lobbying for change. You need structural change.
Yes.
In places like Kenya, people have their homes, they come to work. Here we have a resident population which are identified as our workers, but in fact are not, who actually go out for work, whom we have to care for. We have to make sure the housing is done. So it's a dysfunctional system. It's not the workers' fault. We recognize, we embrace their aspirations. We build schools, we operate schools for them. We provide scholarships for all of our workers' children. People say that is stupid because once they're educated, of course, they don't come back to the plantations, but it's their right. We recognize that, we respect them. But there is still dysfunction because you're still going to get people coming and taking pictures and saying, oh my goodness, you know, look at these poor people. You have politicians who unfortunately don't have the knowledge or the wisdom to understand that you've got a structural problem, who come and try to rouse up people for the wrong reasons, not understanding that in the process they could be killing the golden goose, or rather the goose that lays the golden egg.
Yes.
And so it needs to be resolved. The situation is still colonial in terms of the fact that the workers are stuck in a colonial mode of production. That community shouldn't be in that method. The government has to take a call and say, look, we have to understand that you have business units and you have a community. We need to understand how we build the interaction and how we make sure that a business unit functions as a business unit because the government still holds the golden shareholding. And so we are tenants. We have to give back the land after a certain period. So holding us responsible for something that we have no control over is fundamentally unfair. So we have to fix wages, we have to fix conditions, but we need the participation of the unions who know this situation but don't do much about it. And we need the participation of government who knows, but maybe some of them don't really understand it.
Or connected to that sort of general area of questioning, the world right now is in the grip of an abject economic crisis. These are difficult times for all of us. How's Dilma coping with these economic realities?
In any crisis situation, you have to be aggressive and innovative in how you manage yourself. So for us, we are expanding. We are approaching this situation with a mindset of victory. We have a lot of faith. With the same faith, we are moving to innovation. We are moving into iced tea. We are moving into tea extracts. We are moving into mixology. So we are trying to diversify our base to strengthen the foundation. We are moving, as I said, into cinnamon. Yes. And so we are looking to build the foundation, the strength of Dilma, and it is that will give us our resilience through these difficult times. But the fact is that even in difficult times, people love a good cup of tea, and tea is an affordable luxury. It's not going to set you back like a cognac. It's not $15, $20. For $5, $6, you get a good cup of tea that comes with taste, goodness, purpose, ethical cup of tea. And so it's an affordable luxury. So I don't think the crisis will affect tea. Of course, it makes it difficult to trade in that environment, but we will continue and we will succeed.
It's very buoyant.
Yes.
And robust to you to take. Segueing from there, you mentioned that Dilma is not confined to the tea industry. You've moved into the hospitality industry. You've made your foray into cinnamon cultivation. If you could just tell us a little bit more about these other than tea projects. I guess what I'm asking you is if you could just elaborate on the differences in these other ventures as opposed to, or when set against, alongside tea.
Our businesses always have a heart of tea. So cinnamon was born out of our investment in 2000 in Kahawata plantations. So in addition to tea, we grow cinnamon, rubber, and a few other food crops. Hospitality was born out of the establishment in 2005 of Ceylon Tea Trails, which is a wonderful relay and chateau experience, very luxurious experience of what a tea planter, how a tea planter lived back in the 1800s. So it has a special allure as a visitor to Sri Lanka. So each of these businesses have come from that heart of tea, but for my father it was always tea. The fact that we evolved beyond, in a sense, we never forget that the fact is our core focus is tea.
That's wonderful. To wrap up this conversation, Dilhan, what message, if you like, do you have for our viewers as the CEO of a brand that has really imparted glory and dignity to Sri Lanka's name on the world stage?
Well, I would simply say this. Never forget that my father came here with that very humble message, do try it. New Zealanders accepted. And since then, we have grown on that principle of quality, integrity, and kindness. And so my message is this. Firstly, thank you. Thank you for supporting us. Secondly, we will never compromise. We will never compromise on taste, goodness, purpose, on freshness, on the kindness that are all a part of the promise that my father extended. And the assurance of it is the fact that I'm here with my son and that he will carry on those values to his generation. So I wish every Sri Lankan the very best, and I ask them to help give Sri Lanka the strength and the encouragement that we need to be able to circumvent these challenging times.
Thank you very much for your time,
Thank you.
Dilhan. We wish you and Dilma every success in navigating, as you said, these troublous times. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Dilhan. Thank you.